Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for everyone that stays in the room. My name is Roie Shiloah. I'm the head of Simply Piano in Simply. And today I wanted to spend the next 15 minutes in talking on a bit non-sexy topic, one that most of the new developers are not really considering it as a growth lever, at least for the start. But I hope that after those 15 minutes, some of you going to reconsider the decision. So before we start, just a very quick intro on Simply. We have started our journey 10 years ago with very ambitious mission to change and to do a disruption of how people consuming and learning on musical instrument. Started a journey with two very successful applications, one for piano and one for guitar. Then 2020 has came, COVID changed everything that we knew on how people consuming, interacting with education. This was for us the sign to expand the business and to go to much more verticals. And today Simply has a very ambitious mission in to allow to everyone in the world to consume, to learn on every creative skill that you have, any secret dream that you have on the most simple and fun way. We are doing it today with four main products: piano, guitar, draw, and sing, based in Tel Aviv, 200 people. Yeah, this is us. So how does it relate to our topic? All Simply business in the last 10 years was purely based on app-to-app campaigns, meaning the transaction of the users has stayed in the app itself, and we paid the very painful 30% commission to both Apple and Google. And as a mobile developer, two things are always on our mind. The first one is how we can maximize the revenue per user by, improving the conversion, the ARPU and the LTV. And the second one, of course, to make sure that we are keeping most of the revenue that we have earned in our pockets by reducing the fees that we are paying and increasing the margins. And the nice thing in payment that this topic is basically touch both ways. It can help us improve the conversion, but on the other hand, making sure that we are keeping much more money in our pockets. Lots of people are asking me why now, why we are keep talking about it, why we are looking on this as a growth lever. So over the last 5 years, we have seen some tremendous shift in the regulation that made this possible. In 2019, the first move of Google in the market allowed to a very specific niche of mobile applications to try alternative billing. Simply was one of them. We have integrated Stripe and started to feel what is the value of alternative payment. 2022, Google are starting to feel the winds of the DMA rules, launching a new program, UCB, User Choice Billing, which allow developers to put alternative billing side by side next to Google Billing. 2023, DMA is coming to the world, pointing on both Google and Apple as the gatekeepers and setting some strict rules on how they should allow developers to look on the world of alternative billing. And this was the sign for us in Simply that it's going to be huge, it's going to be massive. We are going to establish a dedicated team that take the world of alternative billing and turn it into a growth lever. 2024, both Google and Apple are doing some massive steps in order to meet the DMA rules. Google are launching a linking out program that allows developers to redirect users from the application to complete the transaction outside and expanding their UCB program to more countries. Apple are doing the same with the linking out and for the very first time open their closed gate to developers to integrate an alternative billing inside the application by the program that's called CTF, Core Technology Fee, only in Europe. 2025, the latest case, the very famous case of Epic versus Apple that allow developers in the US by integration of WebView to suggest alternative billing. And for the very first time, the platform billing is no longer the only option, and we as the developers are open for innovation. So what is really happening behind, what is really happening from the moment that the user is putting his credit card details to the moment that the merchant is approving it. So I've tried to describe it in a very simple way of 8 steps. It's very, very complicated. So on the one hand, there is a lot of room for failures and problems in the process, but on the other hand, lots of room for optimization and conversion lift that we as a developer can do. So how can we do it? In order to understand it, let's talk on 3 main components in the world of payment stack. The first one is the UI, the user experience, the UI that the user interfacing with the paywall, and of course the localization of the paywall, starting from the currencies, the payment method that we are using, suggesting the user, and the mandatory fields that we are asking the user to fill. The second one is the transaction core process. It's what I've just showed in the 8 steps, what's happening behind the scene from the moment that the user put the credit card details until the merchant is approving the transaction. And last but not least, the post-purchase flow, what happening after the user made the purchase, like preventing the involuntary churn, refund and chargebacks, and of course, the COGS of the payment. Before making the decision if to go to alternative payment, let's first consider the cons and pros of this move, because on the one hand, there are a lot of advantages with go with this move. First, the most significant fee reduction, up to 20% reduction in the fee that we are paying today to the stores. You have a full control on the checkout design, the branding, what the user is experiencing. Of course, the ability to experiment endless options of payment, bundles, trials, whatever that you want, something that you not always can in the world of Google and Apple. And of course, it's relevant for mobile and web, something that can very easily replicate between the 2 platforms. But on the other hand, and this is a true story, this is what happened to us as the developers, there are a lot of cons that you need to be ready for them. The first one, which is very, very painful, you as a developer needs to manage both disputes and chargebacks, something that Google and Apple are covering to you in the stores itself. You need to act based on some regulations like the GDPR and local tax laws. There is a huge risk, payments, it's all about trust. If you are not integrating the process in the most smooth way, you can you can break the trust with the user itself. And of course, it's another vendor to work with. So the main part of the session today is how we can turn it into a growth lever, and we wanted to share some best practices that we have done in Simply. The first component that we have looked in terms of growth is the COGS, how we can improve our margins, how we can leverage the regulations into better fees that we are paying, how we can choose even local methods that usually are going with much lower fees. The 2 things that we have done are very simple. The first one is integration. Let's integrate the SDK of alternative payment. We have chose Stripe in both Apple and Google, and go with that, a very significant fee reduction from the very first moment. And of course, we have integrated the new option in both Google and Apple to link out users in specific regions from the application outside to complete the purchase. The second component that we have used is the funnel customization that can drive at the end better conversion rate. I'm talking on using, pricing adjustment, based on global indexes. I'm talking on currencies and localization, and of course, using more advanced payment methods. 3 examples that we have done. We have basically identified that we have a very large proportions of users in Europe that are usually using PayPal. We have integrated PayPal very smoothly and created up to 10% lift in the revenue. The second thing that we have done is a massive localization work on our paywall. I'm talking on using, very famous pricing index, if it's the Big Mac and Spotify and Netflix, and of course try to identify how the user really like to see the prices, because we in Israel like to see the 0.99, but in some countries it's totally different. All this massive work created for us in specific locals 20 to 35% lift in the revenue. And last but not least, we have done a massive expansion to our payment method. We have identified in each of the regions what the user will really like to integrate it with. We have integrated Klarna that allow in some regions the buy now, pay later, SEPA and other local method. All in all created for us 5% lift in the revenue. The third component is the acceptance rate. If you remember the very complicated slides of the 8 steps, how we can prevent the users from churn, the involuntary churn, how we can at the end increase the purchase completion and lower the churn and the involuntary churn of the user itself. Here as well 3 simple steps that we have acted. The first one is to use a very advanced payment integration that allow us to auto-update declined card, and of course smart retries for transactions that were declined. All in all created for us 10% lift in the acceptance rate. The second one, again, 8 steps, lot of room for failure. Not always we know what to do if the transaction has been failed. We are now using a smart transaction recovery tool based on AI that knows to identify the reason for the failure in real time to give it solution. Just by that created another 5% lift in the conversion and the purchase completion. And last but not least, opening a local entities in the places that Simply is doing its business, is most of the business. At the end, if there is, if you're using a local banks, at the end there is much higher chances that the transaction will be approved. And again, just by that, it created us 5% lift in the acceptance rates. Last component is the user communication, which again can create a conversion rate. At the end, payments, it's about trust. The user needs to feel that he's put his money in a safe place. You need to build a trust with him. You need to communicate for him what is the value that he is going to get, and you as a developer knows best when to communicate with him and how to do that. In Google and Apple, you don't have control on that. They can send the emails whatever they want in the same design that they're using, with only the price in the email itself. And we as a Simply took a control on everything that's related to the user communication, try to create a series of emails and communication, and just by that created a huge lift in the acceptance rate and the conversion rate up to 10%. So last, most of developers, mainly young developers, are asking me when to jump into the water, when to start digging into this world. And I'm always claiming that the time is now, because from my perspective, and for my humble perspective, the train is already left the station. I don't see a reason why the platform will go back. More than that, I'm seeing more cases like Epic versus Apple. We are seeing more regulation upcoming that try to force on both Google and Apple to change the policy. A very hot news from today that Google are going to release another update to their billing policy tonight, with much more flexibility to developers, and of course much more innovation in this world that will allow us, the developers, much more flexibility in this world. That's it.